High Definition News, updated for Monday, November 24th, 2014. I'm Jeff Kaufman. The grand jury has handed up its report, and we expect to know sometime later today whether Ferguson police officer Darren Wilson will be indicted in the shooting death of Michael Brown on August 9th of this year. That shooting and the questions surrounding it dominated the national conversation through much of the last part of the summer. There were the racial elements. The cop was white, like most of the Ferguson police force. The victim, African American, like most of the people who live in that St. Louis suburb. There were questions about the manner in which Ferguson police handled the initial investigation into the shooting, how and when they chose to release bit by bit information about Brown. There was anger in the community over the release of a convenience store surveillance tape that police said showed Brown and a friend shoplifting some cigars and shoving the store owner. The store owner said he did not call 911. But police broadcast a description matching Brown just minutes before Officer Wilson confronted them, he said, for walking in the street. And then there is the sequence of events that led to Brown's death. Did he reach for Wilson's service weapon? Did he strike Wilson as Wilson struggled to keep control of his gun and get out of his patrol car? Where was Brown when Wilson fired the fatal shot? Was he lunging at the officer? Or did Wilson shoot a man who was in the process of surrendering or had already begun to kneel on the ground? All these questions and more have occupied the grand jury in secret sessions since a few days after the shooting. There has been plenty of noise out here in the world. Street protests every night in Ferguson, some looting early on, and then later protesters' charges that police overreacted with military equipment and live bullets. Several reporters say police detained or arrested them just for doing their job. Protesters also bullied journalists. Demonstrations in Long Beach, L.A., and many other American cities. Statements urging calm from the president and Michael Brown's parents. Now it all comes down to the grand jury. It is made up of 9 whites and 3 blacks, roughly equivalent to the racial makeup of St. Louis County, which is 68% white and 24% black. There are 7 men and 5 women. Unlike in a criminal trial in which the jury's verdict must be unanimous, a grand jury can make a decision with only 9 votes. The most severe indictment the grand jury could return is second-degree murder. That carries a prison term of 10 to 30 years. The next most serious charge would be voluntary manslaughter, which the law says is causing death under the influence of passion. The possible prison term for that, 5 to 15 years. Officer Wilson could be charged with involuntary manslaughter. First degree, which is causing death by recklessness, or second degree, which is causing death by criminal negligence. And of course, the grand jury could have voted what's called no true bill, which is lawyerese for no charges at all. Wilson would be free of any prosecution. Police departments in many American cities, including L.A., asked for and got a promise that they'd get a few hours' notice before the grand jury's report is publicly revealed. Police said they wanted to have time to get in position to deal with any street demonstrations that might occur. Right now, only the grand jury and court personnel know the decision. That is the sound of water being pumped out of parking structure 2A at LAX right now. Thanks to the Daily News for that audio. A water main broke underneath the parking structure about 10 this morning. But if you're flying out of LAX or meeting someone who's arriving, your plans probably won't be affected. LAX says flight operations are normal, and so is traffic around the horseshoe, although, of course, you cannot park in Structure 2A.
As we know, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, it is a team effort, and that's the part of the fun of it, to help build teams and to work together to make things happen for the good of the country and make a better world. For all of that, I'm immensely grateful.
But with that, this morning at the White House, Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is off the team, out as Secretary of Defense after 2 years. The president said he was lucky to have Hagel as his loyal aide and praised him for having an understanding of how an ordinary soldier thinks, probably because Hagel had been one. He's the first former enlisted combat veteran ever to serve as Defense Secretary.
He understands our men and women like few others, because he stood where they stood. He's been in the dirt and he's been in the mud. And that's established a special bond. He sees himself in them, and they see themselves in him. Over nearly 2 years, Chuck has been an exemplary Defense Secretary, providing a steady hand as we modernized our strategy and budget to meet long-term threats while still responding to immediate challenges like ISIL and Ebola.
But it may have been the fight against Islamic State that caused the president to believe he needed a different kind of defense secretary than the one he'd hired 2 years earlier. The only Republican in the cabinet, a former senator who could maintain relationships with Congress and manage the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Hagel made no secret of his opposition to the war in Iraq, but by the time he became top dog at the Pentagon, that war was over. Or so we thought. With the president's determination to take the fight to Islamic State and to put troops on the ground, there are 3,000 American GIs in Iraq now, acting as trainers and advisors. With Iraq cranking back up, the president reportedly felt he needed to make the change. Hagel will stay on until his successor is nominated and confirmed. In Long Beach on Saturday,
I, Robert Luna.
Robert Luna took the oath of office to become the 26th police chief of the LBC and the first Latino.
I'm obviously very proud of the culture, but I'd like to think that I was selected because I'm competent. I have a lot of experience, and I was the right guy for the job, and I just happen to be Hispanic.
Also there, the outgoing chief, Jim McDonnell, who becomes L.A. County Sheriff on December 1st.
I'm leaving a department that I think the world of. It's really not mine, it's ours. You know, we're working very closely together with Robert Luna. He's a true leader, a man of integrity. Long Beach is in good hands.
But one issue that dogged McDonnell is there to greet Luna today, the spike in officer-involved shootings in recent years. The latest came the day before Luna's swearing in, Friday, when Carrie Smith Viramontes was shot to death by police in a home on Eucalyptus Street. Officers were at the home looking for a girl reported as a runaway. Also inside, Viramontes, who the officers were told had a prior relationship with the girl and was the subject of a restraining order. Police say Viramontes armed himself with a knife, and officers shot him because they feared for the safety of everyone inside the house. Viramontes was dead at the scene at age 18. The timeline of sexual assault allegations against Bill Cosby was extended today when Christina Rulli came forward to say Cosby took advantage of her in 1965 when she was 22. That's 4 years earlier than all previous allegations. Rulli is 71 now. Back then, she was a talent agency secretary. She told CNN that Cosby invited her and some others from the agency to a party at his house. He made her a drink, and then a second drink, and...
I don't remember a thing. It went blank. When you're in that kind of a foggy state, you don't think of anything but that you had drunk too much. So I must have passed out again, because when I awakened again, I found myself on a bed. He was there, he had his shirt off, and I believe he had his pants off. It's pretty groggy. And he had his hand on the back of my head. And so I lifted my head away. I think it surprised him. I lifted my head away and pulled myself away immediately. And I went into the bathroom and I threw up, and I know I threw up a couple of times. When I finished, I came out and he was gone.
Cosby's attorneys have not responded to Rulli's allegations. Last June, when he published his autobiography called Mayor for Life, somebody asked former D.C. Mayor Marion Barry what has been the biggest misperception about him.
The biggest misconception is that most of my life is taken up with junk and scandals and alleged corruption. Most people know me, even in D.C., from a 15-second soundbite.
He means this one. That's Barry being arrested with an ex-girlfriend in a Washington hotel in January of 1990 on crack cocaine charges and claiming it was a setup, even though the FBI video clearly shows him taking a hit off a glass pipe. The original crack-smoking mayor, 2 decades before that guy in Toronto. Barry got 6 months in prison, after which the people of the district re-elected him to a 4th term as mayor. After that, he served 3 terms on the city council. He came to Washington as a civil rights activist, a member of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which worked with MLK. He won praise for helping Washington's marginalized and poor black community, and scorn for the personal scandals that seemed to follow him throughout his time in public service. In the end, he told the folks at that book signing last June, he didn't pay much attention to what people wrote or said about him.
I'm not fazed by it. As long as I'm satisfying the people of Washington, D.C., as long as that gives them some hope and some help, then they can write what they want to write about me. I don't care.
Marion Barry, the former mayor of Washington, D.C., was 78 when he died yesterday. Now you know what we know. I'm Jeff Kaufman, High Definition News.